Welcome back, everyone, for the final episode of Toriko Unveiled for the year. Before the grill gets fired up, I'd like to thank each and everyone here for the year we've had. Despite some setbacks, the channel's seen nothing but upward growth and improvement. This year was my best year on YouTube, and I suspect next year will be even better. So without further ado, in the vast and impossible world of Toriko, there are paths of faith or religion. Though these schools of thought don't worship simply a god, today we're going to be deep diving into the bubble fruit art in its entirety and analyzing the foundation of food honor, food in/immersion, and what those bring to the story. But before, it's the holiday season. Leave a like on this video if you feel like being a giver and not a Grinch this year. Continuing, the bubble fruit art comes right after the Meteor Garlic and Gourmet Casino art. It spans from chapters 174 to 193 and is the overall 14th arc in the series. And surprise, it starts way before they get anywhere near the bubble fruit. The bubble fruit was actually one of the ingredients that the president had left a list behind for Toriko to help him with his training to be gourmet world capable. It actually begins with Toriko and Komatsu arriving at the Artisan Forest, where they meet the fortune teller sushi chef, Monchi. Toriko needs Monchi to create a divining sushi to help find the home of the bubble fruit, the Lost Forest. So, somehow like a divining rod, Mochi can make sushi rolls that can predict where to find the ingredients that you seek, which is wacky as fuck, but this is Toriko. Monchi calls Toriko an idiot, which is apparently normal, and tells him only the best ingredients could help create what he calls the Iho Maki. From here, Toriko actually has to go through a series of mini arcs within the bubble fruit arc, essentially, so I'll go over them as they happen. First, Toriko and the other three Heavenly Kings were requested by the president to capture the Madam Fish of Pot Pond, and only because of Komatsu's insane food luck did they manage to capture it. An important side note, during this mission, the Madam Fish was so hard to find that even Sunny's feelers and Zebra's echolocation couldn't pinpoint its location within the pond. Next up, Toriko and Komatsu travel to the Heavy Drinker Archipelago, which lies at the center of Liquor Sea. Liquor Sea is a vast body of many different types of liquors and liquids, such as wine, whiskey, beer, and even shoju. Toriko explains that they're here for the ingredient King Vinegar that will allow Monchi to make vinegar rice for his divining sushi. More importantly, the Drunken Archipelago is one of those Toriko ecosystems that leaves you wondering, how the hell is this possible? The sharks are drunk, the cows are drunk, hell even the tigers are drunk and have high-class brandy for blood. The ecosystem even provides snack-like ingredients that counteract the effects of the alcohol, like the unkon unko, or as English would say, the turmeric poop. It's a special ginger plant that helps metabolize large amounts of alcohol, so you can enjoy yourself on the islands versus being stuck there in a drunken stupor forever. Though, I probably would say, given how the Toriko world functions, this island could be man-made or man-seeded, but who knows? And speaking of which, they also find a very high capture level beast, the Emerald Dragon, completely knocked and paralyzed. And guess who's on its eternal liquor spring back? Knocking Master Jiro, who even reveals that he comes to this island at most 8 times a week. After a week-long break for nursing their hangovers, Toriko and Komatsu set out for one of the most dangerous ingredients in the world. When told they still require more ingredients by Monchi, Toriko and Komatsu turn to Tepai, the gourmet reviver, who suggests several new ingredients and reveals that he's been recklessly reviving them and has revived an incredibly dangerous one, the Dodurian Bomb. Now, this hunt was perhaps the height of Toriko comedy. The Dodurian Bomb is the world's smelliest ingredient, so smelly in fact that it drives away wildlife and destroys everything around it, the area containing it resembling a blasting test site versus an ecosystem. Here, we get to see the comical faces the series is known for and comically shows during, just low impact moments, which makes the whole experience even funnier. Now, if it was simply just stinky, it'd be easy, but the Dodurian is a special preparation ingredient. You have to brave its stink to capture it. And even if you wear protective equipment, the equipment will rot and the fruit itself will do the same. The Dodurian drops like a literal stink nuke and floods the world, causing visual disgust in multiple characters except Tepa and of course Zange. And even after capturing this ingredient, Komatsu and Toriko take a whole nother month to conquer the stench, being constantly knocked out by its horrid smell, and even then became stained with it for weeks. Next up, our duo pay a visit to one of the few groups we have yet to cover on my channel, the Gourmet Knights. Though originally hostile, once Toriko introduces himself, he is led to Aimaru, the leader of the Gourmet Knights. Fun fact, but also weird, all the knights' names end with Maru. Aimaru, Takimaru, Yukimaru, Raimaru, Kagemaru, and Sukimaru. A bit of research reveals that the suffix maru is actually very common for Japanese male names, and it means perfection or full circle, which kind of makes an odd case for the importance of the gourmet nights in the series, if you really want to think about it, because Aimaru did go to the place where all life began, so it's kind of full circle. Toriko and Komatsu are here for the final ingredient, nori, a dried seaweed wrap essentially. It is revealed they have to go to a town known as Eco-Land, a village that is naturally self-sustaining. Aimaru also reveals his full course, which Toriko marvels at how simple it is, but personally in the world of gourmet delights, I feel like Aimaru could find plenty of naturally occurring foods that don't, I guess, feed into whatever cycle that he's not trying to feed into, but whatever. The next day, Takimaru, as an escort, takes them to Eco-Land, and they are greeted with a sight of a man throwing bombs at the local rabbits. This man, Nanchi, is one of the brothers to Manchi and mayor of Eco-Land. Nanchi briefly explains how their self-sustaining village exists and how it uses ingredients and creatures in their natural forms for commodities like power, heat, and steady water access. Then introducing them to the solar turtle, a creature that naturally stores solar energy and converts it to power, but bad weather has recently put a damper on their local supply. And it's the shell of this creature that sheds after it's been charged that produces the Eco Nori, and Toriko ends up having to hand charge the entire village's turtles into the daybreak. And with that, they have finally collected all of the ingredients needed to create the divining sushi known as the ihomaki. What happens next is the wackiest cooking you've ever seen, as Manchi begins literally laying the smackdown on all the ingredients they've gathered. Body presses, lariats, jumping off ropes, the whole WWE treatment, and Komatsu even notices somehow the ingredients are becoming more condensed and the flavor more, I guess, noticeable as he attacks it. Manchi continues this beating for 2 days, eventually creating a massive, several miles long stalk of sushi, and upon falling, it's now up to Toriko and Komatsu to eat it as they follow the trail to the bubble fruit. Just overall weird. There's a lot of questions here, like how does it somehow know the ingredient they're trying to find because it's just a sushi? But the only final thing to note is that the Donduran bomb inside the ihomaki actually does still repel wild creatures from wanting to snack on it, and thankfully Toriko and Komatsu did build up a resistance, so that's a fun bit of writing. Here, we transfer to the second half of the Bubble Fruit arc, and the official introduction to the Lost Forest and the treasures within. Toriko and Komatsu, having eaten for what seems like miles, stop when they come across something more bizarre than the sushi itself, a mountain-sized hole in the landscape cutting it off. They then catch a ninja, stealing some of the ihomaki, and pursue him until they stumble across the legendary 10-star restaurant, Vanishing Cuisine, which only once they bow and show honor does it appear. This is because the woods in the Lost Forest are a special type of tree that sync up in response to changes in the environment and can make things appear invisible. From here, we meet a reoccurring character and the head chef of the restaurant, Chiru, who is an active character well up into the end series actually. Komatsu and Toriko attempt to eat the restriction-heavy foods of the restaurant and barely scratch the surface, and the entire time, there's an old man in the corner chowing down like there's literally no tomorrow. The old man is the leader of Shokurin Temple and living gourmet legend, Master Chin Chin Chin. Yes, that's his name, Chin Chin Chin. I'm not sure if that's a reference, but Master Chin Chin Chin. Before leaving, one thing of note is that Master Chin actually asked Chiru if Lady Chiyo, the head chef, had returned, and states that since she disappeared, the number of missing chefs had drastically increased. But enough exposition. Here's where we launch into the food honor stuff. So, the Lost Forest, to those who lack gratitude and respect, appears invisible. Only once our duo give thanks does the massive Shokurin Temple come into being, and they quickly learn even if you can see the temple, it's almost like a living entity and is able to sense any level of disrespect, and it is incredibly petty and vengeful, immediately stabbing Toriko in the foot and then attempting to drop a boulder on Komatsu. Due to the actions of a random man insulting the temple, it sets itself ablaze, a blaze which Master Chin easily scoops up and contains using his unique cooking fighting technique, the spoon. It'll never make sense. Here is where Toriko and Komatsu's food honor training finally begins. Master Chin leads them to an area where disciples are practicing, and we get a sight similar to those of the panoramic shots of Shaolin temples. Chin says that 100,000 people come here every year desiring to learn food honor, and though they have branches all over the world, this is the harshest training spot at Shokurin Temple. On that note, Master Chin also comments that while a few of the trainees are people with strong desires to learn, the vast majority of the ones here are convicts sent from places like Honey Prison, shout out Zebra, to be rehabilitated. And honestly, given the danger of this temple to anyone who doesn't show some sort of appreciation for life, I can understand how and why it's used to reform criminals. From here, Chin hands Toriko and Komatsu's training off to the insistent instructor, Shu, who Toriko automatically downplays as he wants to learn food honor from the master. And Shu counters with warning Toriko that Chin's methods are, as Shu puts it, Spartan. This is where it's revealed that the 5,000-meter mountain, or a mountain over half the size of Mount Everest, that came down Death Falls during the Garami arc was Master Chin's doing. And Chin's response to this was if Toriko had died from that mountain, he would not be worthy of Chin's training. They're then shown the bubble fruit, though this is just a decoy for training purposes. It still does pop at the slightest hint of Toriko's appetite, and Shu then challenges Toriko to a fight and honestly embarrasses him. Despite Toriko being leagues stronger than Shu in terms of power, he can't hit him. You see, because Toriko doesn't have really any affinity for food honor, his techniques are incomplete. He's wasting energy and movements. Shu can dodge anything Toriko throws at him, and at the end of this bout, he remains untouched. Though Toriko and the battlefield are utterly devastated, Shu tells Toriko how food honor isn't simply mental, but how it expresses itself through technique. The greater one's food honor, the greater their own inherent techniques and the applications of them. Food honor is a thing like Buddhism or etc. To maintain food honor would be like praying at a shrine and maintaining the same level of prayer and gratefulness even after leaving the shrine. By maintaining the state of gratitude, one can accomplish increasingly more difficult tasks with ease and proficiency, and even then, you can see with how easily Shu avoids Toriko that it's so much more in depth than that. And as if beating Toriko wasn't enough, Shu even outclasses Komatsu in an outright food prep competition. It's clear the two have much to learn, but in the meantime, Shu feeds them a bowl of beans that they have to eat with 15-foot-long chopsticks. The next day at 5 a.m. sharp is food meditation training, where Toriko and Komatsu have to keep torches lit that specifically go out if the meditator thinks of anything other than gratefulness for food. They're introduced to several ingredients, all that are centered around meditation of expression or the gratitude of food to be consumed, and even take it to extremes with the gratitude cactus, which will gravely injure anyone not using the proper form in their prayer bow. Over the next few days, Komatsu and Toriko slowly but incredibly gain deeper understandings of food honor, and in this way, we can see their training has been very Mr. Miyagi style, cause while it seems they've just been doing busy work, each and every exercise has actually honed their mind and bodies to do things by expending less effort. Example, how after training, a casual hand swipe from Toriko can take out a building, or now Komatsu can instinctively degland a puffer whale, one of the most dangerous poison ingredients in the world, and he can do it effortlessly, something that even Coco can't do. Shu is actually amazed at their progress, as it usually takes a month before a trainee can even keep a torch lit. This comes with an odd omen from Master Chin that training Toriko and Komatsu will be his last job in the human world. And if you guys haven't noticed in the series, whenever a character says something like this, it's to strictly contrast their power level to the human world because they're referring to leaving for the gourmet world. We then get a few brief panels showing Toriko and Komatsu's progress and the fact that the foods they would eat for the final exams are the ones they've been eating the entirety of their training, meaning now they can fully honor the food. Things, however, ramp up when Master Chin literally superhero drops into the temple, and he reminds Toriko also that outside of their accomplishments, he's gonna need reimbursement for the damaged buildings, but again, mostly that he'll be taking over their training from here on. He then tells Shu to assemble all of the assistant masters of the temple and be ready for whatever happens. At this point, it's clear the tension is building ever so subtly in the background, with Master Chin at its very point. First, he mentioned Chio and how many more chefs are missing after her disappearance. Then, that she isn't so weak to just simply be carried off. off. And next, his comments on how Toriko and Komatsu need to master food honor quickly, and how cryptic his orders are on putting the temple on alert. It's pretty clear here that something is coming. After revealing the bubble fruit at the temple to be fakes, he then takes Toriko to Bubble Road, maybe a reference to Snake Wave from Dragon Ball Z or whatever inspired it, but Toriko is to walk the entire length of it to attain the bubble fruit. Toriko excitedly accepts, and as they begin, question what's the catch to this? Giant monsters, crazy weather, extreme environments. Chin tells him that this will develop the secret technique only known as the ultimate honor of food immersion, even commenting that Toriko has only known measly devotion to meals, and it's here Toriko begins to realize that there is nothing on Bubble Way, no hazards, no monsters, and no resources. And here's where we finally get the reveal of what's prompting Master Chin's urgency. A giant skeletal bird is slowly approaching the Lost Forest, carrying a giant Chef Otake and Granny Chiyo. And let me say, this entire arrival was brilliantly set up, because even before landing, the forest itself began disappearing in mass, and the temple masters are instantly preparing themselves for something dangerous. Even still, Toriko and Master Chin continue to walk, and Toriko notes that they had easily covered hundreds of kilometers and felt like they'd been walking for days. And at this point, Toriko's body is starting to go into starvation mode. Since beginning, he's dropped 50 kilograms or 110 pounds. He asks if many people have made it to the bubble fruit, and Chin answers many actually have, even Aimaru. He does note Aimaru completed Bubble Way in only a few days. Now with starvation and fatigue setting in, Toriko is bewildered how Master Chin can keep going, and as if reading his mind, Chin reveals that he actually weighs close to 1 ton right now, because thanks to Food's Inn, he can store literal months of nutrition within his body and survive without eating or drinking. But only once you truly devote yourself to food and express endless gratitude can you find the treasure of the temple. While Toriko is starting to look like you could feed him for 5 cents a day, things at the temple are just as bad, as now the entire compound and surrounding landscape disappear as Granny Chiyo arrives. She forces the forest to show itself from sheer intimidation, something that already puts into context how dangerous this old woman is. The temple didn't attempt to fight back or defend itself like when the protagonist had first arrived. It chose to hide and was then shocked back into sight. Arriving with the definition of aura, Chiyo, while looking like a sweet granny, essentially tells everyone there she's here to say goodbye to them today before they die. Back on Bubble Road, Master Chin notices this disturbance, and Toriko is literally almost blacking out from starvation, to the point that his autography kicks in. But even after this, the road still stretches on, and Toriko is essentially about to die, flashing back through the memories of his loved ones and thanking his body and everything it's done for him, and thanking the source of his body's strength, which is food. He then gives thanks before his death, and only then does the bubble fruit emerge. You see, only on the verge of death does this fruit appear, and only on the verge can one appreciate the entire journey of food, from mouth to tongue to throat to stomach. It is the full journey of a meal and the appreciation that unlocks Food's Inn. Toriko even commenting that the world looks different now, and that it feels like he's died and come back, which, as I've said before, kinda sounds like some sort of food-based nirvana, but with its job done, Master Chin immediately blasts off towards the temple to confront Granny Chiyo, and there the scene is anything less than honorable. The Scum Beast and Skeleton Bird are killing the initiates, and Chiyo reveals that she is here to sever the source of Food's Inn, and it's clear that she can back it up. In seconds, she carves up the most confident temple master like a turkey, and the entire facade of an old lady is gone. Komatsu's doing his crying thing as he's confronted by Otake, who immediately stabs him. False alarm though, because he stabbed him with a revining knife, and begins basically monologuing to Komatsu on how he's better than him and how his partner's better than him. And overall, Shokurin Temple is just taking L's left and right, and meanwhile Toriko is still on Bubble Road, buck maxing. Skipping past the carnage the gourmet core inflicts, Master Chin finally arrives and just goes buff old man mode, enraged by Granny Chiyo's joining of the gourmet core. And even Shu comments that if the master is going all out, they have to leave the area. Now keep in mind, this is Master Chin that routinely scoops mountains out of the ground and can travel at hypersonic speeds. Before the battle begins, Chiyo fatally impales him, showing the literal first time it's ever seen Master Chin taking damage. With the battle already looking grim, we get the textbook anime moment with the hero with new powers and super long hair arriving. Master Chin, confident in Toriko's new abilities, seals himself and Chiyo inside of a spoon dome from the final battle, and one thing I have to note is Granny Hio's intense hatred of food honor and food's end as a whole, almost as if it's flawed or that it failed her. Briefly going back to Toriko, he effortlessly blasts the scum beast to pieces with his new abilities, and seemingly seconds later, the spoon dome opens and it's revealed Master Chin got bodied, with Granny Chiyo once again mocking the mantra of food honor. Now, once again, we can confirm Master Chin is higher than mountain level and in minutes was reduced to a state of near death by Granny Chiyo. And ironically, this isn't the worst. The story cuts to Chiru rushing through the Lost Forest to come and aid the battle at the temple, when a big bang shark appears overhead, signaling something more dangerous than Chiyo is on its way. It's however revealed that the reason Master Chin lost is because his emotions became unbalanced and he couldn't maintain his food honor, specifically because of the reason Chiyo joined the Gourmet Corps. Now, I explained Toriko and Chiyo's battle in the last video, but briefly, Toriko's training and ingesting of the bubble fruit has made him easily stronger than she currently is, and though the battle seems close, she still has prior damage from her battle with Master Chin. Now with the arrival of Starjuin and the GT robot, the siege of Shokurin Temple ends, and one interesting thing to note is that Starjuin also captured a clutch of bubble fruits on his way to the temple. Whether that means he attained food's end as well, who knows, but he declares that he and Toriko will solve this at the Gourmet Festival, thus concluding the bubble fruit arc. Chiru arrives not a moment too late, and with the aid of a revival knife or a knife made from self-regenerating creatures, she restores Master Chin's wounds and Toriko feeds him the bubble fruit. It is here, like I said earlier, Master Chin reveals the reason Chiyu joined the Gourmet Corps: resurrection of the dead, or the pursuit of the ingredient center. Now, going back to Granny Chiyo and Master Chin, after the events of the Gourmet Festival and her betrayal by Neo operators, Chiyo seemingly rejoins the ego side of the war and eventually travels to the Gourmet world with the rest of the crew, her being one of the most skilled chefs among the ones chosen to go to Blue Shell. And it's during the Blue Shell arc that we get a better hint as to why she originally betrayed Shokurin Temple. Chiyo and Chin were partners, I think more so than hunter and cook, but I think life partners, as the two, I believe, had a child together, this child unknown, but was confirmed to be a son, and it's because of their son's death that Chiyu joined the Gourmet Corps. With Medora's promise to attain all ingredients, he would easily be able to obtain Center, the ingredient known to cause life or rebirth, and Chiyu, I believe, planned to use this to revive her son. Suddenly, Chiyu makes a little more sense. She had abandoned food honor and the so-called appreciation of Shokurin Temple because even when their son had died, Chin likely maintained that they need to show appreciation and not unbalance themselves in their emotions, and in this grief likely built a massive resentment towards the temple and Master Chin himself, evidence of how she came to literally eradicate the entire school of thinking at the root. When the group goes to the spirit world, it's shown that Chiyu finally gets her wish and some closure as she encounters what I believe the soul of her son. A real side note here is how Chiyu explains that a mysterious figure gave her information on Center, info that even the president of Ego hadn't disclosed to the Zero biotype. And though there are no names spoken, it's pretty clear the panel shows Joey, so actually it was Joey's meddling once again that triggered this event, as we learned this was not a mission sanctioned by the Gourmet Corps leadership. The main message of the Bubble Fruit arc, I feel, is patience and appreciation. If you notice, even with the ingredients, cooking, training, or exploring the local environments, the Bubble Fruit arc was actually one of the most chock-full in Toriko. We got appearances from most of the cast, with parts of adventure like Eco Village, we finally get to see the Gourmet Knights in their home setting. Furthermore, with each adventure to create the Iho Maki, Toriko and Komatsu in a way were already preparing for their food honor training. Even when the story actually started to climax, it actually never felt rushed, and a lot of the questions we wanted to get answered did. This is easily one of the best Toriko arcs in my opinion, and I could sit here and repeat that forever, but without further ado everybody, I'd like to thank you for watching. Again, it's been hell of a year. We've had some massive growth and massive setbacks. the channel got demonetized, but I am truly thankful for each and every one of you that has supported me. I hope that continues, but for now, Merry Christmas, remember to stay sane and stay safe, and give appreciation for the universe's great bounty. Itadakimasu.